Hello, fellow Rotarians and guests. My name is Jennifer Bleasner, and I have the honor of being the president of the Rotary Club this year. I am absolutely so tickled that so many guests would join us today. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Rotary before we formally start the program. You know, Rotary is a worldwide organization of over 1.2 million business, professional, and community leaders. The Yakima Rotary Club is one of 34 million clubs around the world. And interestingly, we are the 31st largest club in the world. Our virtual format today gives us an opportunity to welcome you via Zoom, and we hope you'll consider joining us again online as we are having our programs online or in the future at the Yakima Convention Center. We're so pleased that you would join us today for our annual Black History program. Past President Eric Silvers has organized this program for over 10 years now, and today you're going to hear from members of our club's Racial Justice Ad Hoc Committee. Rotary International has adopted a statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our club's ad hoc committee built on it, and the board of directors adopted the following statement. The Yakima Rotary Club has no tolerance for racism, promoting respect, celebrating diversity, demanding ethical leadership, and working tirelessly to advance peace and equality are central tenets of our work. We will do our part to listen, learn, and take action to ensure that we continue to contribute to making positive and lasting change. We are committed to cultivating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture in which people from underrepresented groups have greater opportunities to participate as members and as leaders. For those of you who have not joined us before, we have some traditional Rotary business to attend to first before you'll hear our guest speaker. We'll start out with a welcome from our greeters, listen to a music selection, have our invocation, and then some announcements. So we invite you to keep your microphone muted, to sit back and relax and enjoy this program. To get us started are our greeters, Rebecca Pinnell and Ryan Anderson.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. Welcome to Rotary. We're so glad you're here.
Hey everybody, I'm Ryan Anderson. Thanks so much for joining us today. You're so welcome to join our space if you're a guest, and it's so good to see you, fellow Rotarians. Yeah, and you're welcome every week. You know, we're always looking for new members, and we've been working hard to create space for new people and the whole community. So we hope to see you at another meeting soon, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you both, Rebecca and Ryan. Next, we have our music with David Rogers.
Thank you, President Jennifer. We have two selections to open today's meeting. The first is Lift Every Voice and Sing. The performance will be by Alicia Keys with narration by Anthony Mackie. The video was produced for the NFL, which will explain the preponderance of football imagery on the screen. We have sung this song together many times during these programs in past Rotary years. For those of you who are as white as I am, you may have looked around while singing and noted to yourself, every Black person in the room knows every word to this song, and I don't. So what's the story? Lift Every Voice and Sing was a collaboration of two brothers. They were both school teachers in their native Jacksonville, Florida at the time. The words were a poem by James Weldon Johnson, who was an author, poet, a lawyer, diplomat, a true Renaissance man with many, many firsts, including being the first African-American executive secretary of the NAACP. The music was provided by younger brother, John Rosamond Johnson, who went on to a very successful career on Broadway and became the first director of the first elite music conservatory specifically targeted to talented young Black musicians. The song was written in honor of Abraham Lincoln's birthday and first performed 120 years ago this month by 500 school children at the Stanton Academy, a segregated school in Jacksonville, where the elder Johnson was principal. The Johnson brothers subsequently moved to New York and all but forgot the song, but the children did not. They kept singing it, they taught it to other children, and within 20 years, the song had spread throughout Black communities all across America. The lyrics are a reminder of a long and anguished history of struggle for Black people in America. They're a tribute to resilience and fortitude. They're an exhortation not to forget the lessons of the past, but also, perhaps most importantly, an expression of optimism and hope for a better future. We shall overcome might be more widely known, but really it's this song that was the musical bedrock of the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, and it became known informally as the Black National Anthem. More recently, you might have seen in the news, there's an effort to designate this song the United States national hymn. The theory is we have one country, we don't need two national anthems, and furthermore, we all share this common history as a nation, and really, we all should know every word of this song by heart. We'll conclude with a short and brilliant arrangement of God Bless America, performed by King's Return, an a cappella vocal quartet singing in the stairwell of Cornerstone Baptist Church in Arlington, Texas. This is a special request of Ms. Esther Huey as a reminder that God can bless America as we all work together to create a better future. So, Carolyn, take it away.
At the dawn of the 20th century, America was a country full of promise and hope for many. Black Americans faced a different reality, a nation separate and unequal. Yet their hope persisted. Pained by inequality, but inspired by resilience, writer and civil rights activist James Weldon Johnson put pen to paper. His words would become a unifying call, a hope for a brighter tomorrow, a timeless exhortation to lift every voice and sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing a rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory.
There are forces that want to take us back to another place. We don't want to go back. We want to go forward.
God bless America. Land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with light from above. From the mountain to the
musical selections, David. Thank you so much for that. And next on our agenda, Adrienne Garner is here with our invocation. Adrienne.
Thank you, President Jennifer, and welcome to fellow Rotarians and all of our guests on here today, almost 200. What an amazing group to have to us today. If we can just bow our heads for those who would like to join in, please do so. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you humbly today, recognizing the work that you have allowed us to do in this community in the area of service. This club was founded on service and commitment to serve others. We recognize our history and those who have paved the way in African American history. We recognize the willingness of our community to seek out areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion to make sure that we are coming together for one common goal. What makes us whole? It's the community that makes us whole, us serving as one, becoming one. And today I ask you to guide our path, put a light in our path so that us as leaders can continue to do the good works that you set out for us to do. Thank you, Father, for the blessings that we've already received and for the blessings yet to come. Amen.
Beautiful words, Adrienne. Thank you so much for providing the invocation today. Now I've got some announcements to make, and unfortunately the first one is some sad news. One of our fellow Rotarians has passed away, and that is Doug Corcoran. He passed away just yesterday afternoon. Doug joined Rotary in 1968, was a Paul Harris Fellow. We'll be announcing information soon about his service, but until that, if you would please, if you'd like, bow your heads and just join me in a moment of silence as we remember Doug Corcoran. Thank you. Please keep his family in your thoughts and prayers. Now, I have another announcement. This one's a little bit lighter. You know, for our guests, I just want to let you know that while the Rotary International theme is Rotary Opens Opportunities, we have a theme for our club this year too, and it is Rotarians Are Going Places. And last night, your Rotary Club Board of Directors met by Zoom to talk about a very special Rotarian who's going to be going places, and that is to be club president for the 2022 and 23 year. So I have just a little bit of information about this person. This person is descended from one of the original Valley pioneers who settled in Piety Flats back in the 1860s, long before Hoptown Pizza was there. This person was born here in Yakima and raised here, attended Eisenhower and then Willamette University. This person worked for fellow Rotarian Dick Marble at Yakima Hardware Company. This person also spent 6 months traveling Europe in a VW pop-top van. This person joined Rotary in 1982, and since joining Rotary, this person has chaired 17 committees, and this person works in the real estate industry. And if you haven't guessed it yet, well, maybe this will ring a bell. You see, this Rotarian rings a bell for the Salvation Army on an annual basis. Please join me in giving a virtual standing ovation for your Rotary president in the years 2022 to 2023, Rick Fairbrook. Rick, I hope you're feeling the love. You all may not know, but for those of you who don't, the board has a tradition of showing up after making this decision on that person's doorstep to make them an offer they cannot refuse. And last night, a few of us wearing our masks and socially distancing as much as possible showed up on Rick's doorstep, only to ring the bell and find out that he's in Oakland. So we kind of had to pivot, as you say, and we got him on FaceTime where he did accept the offer. And if you want to see some video of those shenanigans, David Links was so graciously there to take it all in on the camera. We had the Rotary board on Zoom, everybody FaceTiming with iPhones together, and it makes for a pretty funny video. So that'll be posted on Facebook later today. Hope you enjoy it. So again, congratulations to President-elect Rick Fairbrook. So next, we have a report from our Racial Justice Ad Hoc Committee. So here is Sonia Rodriguez-True and Quinn Dallin to tell us more.
Thank you, President Jennifer. President Jennifer, fellow members and honored guests. We all have the horrific image in our minds of the police officer's knee on George Floyd's neck, recalling his last words of his life, "I can't breathe." In response to this tragic event of May 25th, 2020, and led by past President Eric Silvers, in June of 2020, our board approved an ad hoc committee to consider our club's response to racism by education and bringing individuals from different backgrounds to the table. Our ad hoc committee began meeting weekly in July of 2020, and we have had up to about 20 members. We felt very strongly that our club should take a stand on the issue of racism, and we engaged in a lot of discussion regarding a statement about racial justice for our club to adopt. Our committee member, Brian Anderson, presented our Rotary International Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Statement, which was unanimously adopted by our board in October of 2020 and reads as follows. The Yakima Rotary Club has no tolerance for racism. Promoting respect, celebrating diversity, and demanding ethical leadership and working tirelessly to advance peace and equality are central tenets of our work. We will do our part to listen and learn and take action to ensure that we continue to contribute to making positive and lasting change. We are committed to cultivating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture in which people from underrepresented groups have greater opportunities to participate as members and leaders. In our other meetings, we have taken action to educate ourselves. We've all read White Fragility, and we've watched Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. These have led to spirited, delicate, and candid discussions in our group regarding racial justice issues. We've also enjoyed hearing from the perspectives of many guest speakers, including former NAACP President Reverend Willie Pride, Jordan Chaney, Justice Helen Whitener, who was the first Black woman on our Supreme Court, Superintendent Trevor Green, Police Chief Matt Murray, and Caitlin Elmo, a teacher from Sela High School. Now, currently, we are working on plans of action of our diversity statement. We welcome you to join us, and I will leave the rest to Quinn Dolan.
Thank you, Sonia. So I was asked to just tell what we are doing now. We are working on an action statement, tangible activities we can do and connect with in the community. But we would join, this is not just a Rotary committee, this is a committee where we are engaging the community. So if you are interested in meeting with us, we currently meet Tuesdays at 3 p.m. And you can send Carolyn an email asking to join that, and we'll make sure that you get the Zoom link. I'll put Carolyn's email in the chat, but it's Yakima Rotary at yakimarotary.org, and we invite you all to be a part of this.
Excellent. Thank you both for the update. Next on the agenda is President-elect John Ball with a very special video presentation. John.
Yes. Thank you, Jennifer. And I'm really pleased to see everyone here to see the video. Sonia referred to this series called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. And as someone, myself, who in my long lost youth grew up in a pretty very white home in eastern Iowa, but would travel regularly into the deep, highly segregated South, Jim Crow South, where my grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins lived. I floated through much of this disparity, but I was floating through because I was not really affected other than the fact that I could see there was separation. So once I became involved with this committee, as well as in other things before now, Carolyn, I believe, turned us on to this series. Emmanuel Achu, who is a former continuing the football feed from David, the Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. And he has had a series of videos of which he's interviewed a family, for example, which adopted mixed race children, a minister, couples who are interracial couples, and talk to them quite candidly. And today you're going to see one with two very familiar people and their children, Chip and Joanna Gaines of Magnolia, and their conversations with him. And I think I invite you all not only to, of course, to watch this one, but to watch some of the other ones in this series. They are both enlightening, they're moving, in some cases almost heartbreaking, but also give you a much, much deeper sense that's more than just the intellectual sense, but the emotional sense of what it means to grow up Black in America. So with that, Carolyn.
Welcome to another episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. If we truly want to bring forth change, it not only starts with you and I, but it's also about the next generation. So I'm privileged to be joined by Magnolia co-founders, but more importantly, parents of 5, Chip and Joanna Gaines. How are you all?
We're good.
Doing great. Thank you for having us, man.
Of course. Now, you came with Drake, Gella, Duke, Emmy, and crew. Chip, why was it so important that you bring your whole family here for this conversation?
Oh man, when I saw your video, and it's been a couple weeks back now, I can't believe how time has flown, but I mean, bottom line, our family wants to hear what you have to say, and the idea about having an uncomfortable conversation with the Black man, honestly, is exactly what we need for this exact time. No?
Okay, why don't you go get a donut,
okay,
baby?
go get a donut, little bro.
Crew's gonna go get a donut. He'll join us later.
He's like his mom. Thank you.
Now, let's have the uncomfortable conversation. Okay. Joe, I know you had some questions.
Yeah. So, we've been having this dialogue with our kids, and Chip the other day, he was wanting to kind of get a pulse on what are our kids, what are they thinking about all of this? And so he asked the kids a question. Hey, pretend like you're at a gas station and you see a Black man and a white man. Are you more threatened by either of those two men? And the kids really quick all said no. Why? Like in their mind, they didn't even think about that. And so later, Chip and I were talking, and this whole idea of this colorblind thing came up. Chip said, I'm proud. I think our kids are colorblind. And then we started kind of pushing back on that. And I think our question to you is, I've heard other parents say that they want to raise their kids colorblind. In your opinion, what's the best way to move forward with this conversation?
I think that it's best that we raise our kids to see color, because there's a beauty in color and there's a beauty in culture. Yeah. So I'm first generation American, and so I didn't grow up with any animals. I didn't grow up with any dogs. And so my sister got attacked by a dog when she was younger. So now as a 29-year-old man, I can't decipher between a dog that's a threat and a dog that's just a pet.
Wow.
Because I didn't grow up with any animals. And I think that if we don't see color, if we don't expose our children two different colors, two different races, then it'll be the same thing. As a white kid who becomes an adult, you won't be able to decipher the difference between a Black man that's a threat and a Black man that's just Black.
Sure.
A Black person won't be able to decipher between a white person that's a racist and a white person who's just white and may happen to be racially ignorant. So I think there's a strength, there's a beauty in seeing color. I don't like the concept of color blindness because colors and cultures are beautiful.
Amen. It's kind of what makes us human.
Exactly.
Everybody's got their own differences and uniquenesses.
Yes.
And even as you imagine our kids here of 5, each one of them have a different look. Each one of them have a different eye color. But, each one of our kids have these uniquenesses. And maybe to your point, it's okay to highlight those things, I appreciate that. I've got a question in that, if you asked anyone, even a racist, if they're a racist, I would almost argue, that all of them would say no. How do we attack and solve a problem that I would say some people in our community don't even understand that we've got?
I think that in America, we have to remember history is meant to be remembered, but history isn't always meant to be celebrated. And I think that we have racism so ingrained into our culture, we don't even realize we're blind to it. I go to Nigeria every summer for a medical mission trip. And there was a sweet middle-aged Nigerian woman who, as I was escorting her into the optometry station to get glasses, she refused to get glasses. She was like, I don't need them. She was bumping into things along the way.
Wow.
Well, 30 minutes later, after we fit her for glasses, there was a huge smile on her face. face because now she realized she can see the full depth of life, see all the dimensions of life, see all the colors of life.
Sure.
And I would argue that that's the same issue we have in America. Like my white brothers and sisters, until they put their glasses on, they can't see all the dimensions of life. And so they can't understand the full picture of, oh, maybe having a school named after a Confederate general that I have to attend as a black person, maybe that's a problem.
Sure.
Maybe having statues littered across campuses that I have to look at of men who would have oppressed, enslaved, and potentially executed me, maybe that's a problem. So I think that in America, we have to do a better job of properly discussing and placing our heroes.
Sure, Emmanuel, that's powerful, man. I have a quick story about cancer, and cancer is not a real prevalent thing in our family. I was in New York just a couple years back, and I ran into a gal named Gabe Grunwald, and she explained to me about her battle with cancer, and within just a few short years, Joe and I have become just huge advocates of cancer, and we've been to St. Jude and the experience that happened there. And something about your video, Emmanuel, I want to be real clear, was almost like that light bulb moment. I don't have a whole lot of personal experience with cancer and the challenges that people face in that way, but I'm telling you, once I learned about it and I understood it and it affected my soul, I couldn't unforget it. And when I saw your video and even the title, An Uncomfortable Conversation with a Black Man, it was like there was a light bulb that went on in my head. And I was like, I think I've been blind to this reality for maybe my whole life.
And that's my goal of these conversations, for your children, for you, for myself.
When you hear the phrase, we've come a long way, does that feel right to you? Like, is that accurate?
We've come a long way. I would say that it is accurate, but it is incomplete. It's accurate because there was slavery for 339 years. And then after slavery, there were Jim Crow laws. So technically, we've come a long way from slavery to Jim Crow, and then from Jim Crow to the new Jim Crow, the last 70 years or so.
Wow.
That is coming a long way, right? Black people are no longer enslaved. However, there's still such a long way to go. I mean, think about this for a second. Last week, it was 53 years ago to the day that Black and white people finally were able to be married. We were spending the night here in Waco last night, and I thought about this for a second at a dear white friend's house, and I realized if this was 70 years ago, I would have been executed for that.
Wow.
Just imagine that for a second.
Wow.
Sure.
If this was 70 years ago and I was staying in a white person's house in Texas as a black man, I would have been executed for that. So have we come a long way? Absolutely. Do we still have a long way to go? No doubt about it. But I'm hopeful to a degree because of this, because of interactions like this, and more importantly, because of you all. So I know, Emmy, you had a question that you wanted to ask.
Are you afraid of white people?
Oh, whoa.
That's what I love about children. Emmy, that is a phenomenal question. I'm not afraid of white people. I am cautious of white people. I think about water and electricity. Water, necessary for life. Electricity, it's also necessary for life. But I do understand if those two have a negative interaction, it could be lethal.
Dang.
Wow.
And so when I still might use my cell phone charger in the bathroom, as a female, you still might use your curling iron or your blow dryer next to the sink.
Sure.
But you have to remember, if those two things ever have a negative interaction, it could be lethal. So I'm not afraid of white people. I'm just cautious. And I think the beautiful thing of children and about children is that we learn things as kids and it develops us as adults, which is why you all being here with your children is the most powerful thing, because this conversation could be life-changing. And not necessarily for their life, but for a life of someone who looks like me.
Sure.
Drake, I know you had a question as well.
So with all that's going on in the world, do you have hope for the future?
Do I have hope for the future? I would say absolutely. But I have hope for the future because of this reason. After I put out my first video, I saw Chip retweeted it. And I reached out to you, and you said, I brought my entire family of 7 together because 30 years ago I saw the LA riots, and 30 years ago I'm seeing these riots.
Yes.
And I will not let that happen again. So do I have hope for the future? I do, because of a man like your dad. Do I have hope for the future? I do, because of a woman like your mom.
Wow.
But the only way to have hope for the future is if you all listen to these people, if these people listen to me, and if I listen to them, then I think we all have a lot of hope for the future. So,
Amen.
Chip, I thank you first and foremost for being willing. Joe, I thank you for being the matriarch of all matriarchs. And I thank you all for watching another episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. Make sure to follow, make sure to subscribe, and make sure to ask your questions because the world needs all of us.
Thank you, John, very much for bringing that to us today. Next, we have past President Eric Silvers, who is here as our Sergeant at Arms. Eric.
Oh, thank you, President Jennifer. I really appreciate you helping us get this all going here. And fellow Rotarians and guests, this is a time that we raise some money for our Rotary charities. Guests, you are exempt, but I hope that you enjoyed this. One thing that I like to do whenever we have our Black History programs is I like to highlight some people in our community that have made significant contributions and help move the needle in our community to make it better. So our first one that we'd like to be able to show is who was the major fundraiser to assist the city of Yakima in obtaining the grant from the federal government to build the Southeast Community Center, now known as the Henry Beauchamp Community Center, and went on to serve as their first executive director. Henry Beauchamp, Miss Esther Huey, or Mrs. Ruby Bowler? The answer is C, Miss Ruby Bowler. Ruby is the mother of Suzanne Bowler Bacon, the mother-in-law of Frank Bacon, Bruce Bacon's grandmother, and Billy Bacon's great-grandmother. All right, our next one. Charles Machine Gun Carter qualified for the Moscow Olympics in the 1965 weight class. However, he did not compete due to the United States boycott of the games. What year was that? Was it 1980, 1984, 1990? And the correct answer is 1990. And by the way, he trained at the Muhammad Ali camp in Deer Lake, Pennsylvania. Also, by the way, he was a student of Muhammad Ali's, and he also boxed professionally in Las Vegas. Next one. Craig Everhart was a Triple Crown record holder in the 100, the 200, and the 400 as a junior in what high school? Eisenhower High School, Lincoln High School in Tacoma, A.C. Davis High School. And the correct answer is A.C. Davis High School. He went on to UCLA on a 4-year scholarship where he was recognized as an All-American, and he tried out for the Olympics in the 2004 games. All right. And our last one, Fred Lamont Anderson from Toppenish, Washington, is a former National Football League defensive lineman who earned 2 Super Bowls rings while playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers in Super Bowl 13, 1979, Super Bowl 14 in 1980. Which 2 teams did the Steelers beat? Denver Broncos and the Raiders, the Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Rams, Kansas City Chiefs and the Miami Dolphins. Which one? It was the Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Rams. And by the way, he played college football at Oregon State University and also at Prairie View A&M University. And he also played for the Seattle Seahawks for 3 years. Thank you very much. And I hope we raise some money. Feel free to send it in to the Rotary office. Thank you very much, President Jennifer.
Thank you, past President Eric Silvers. We appreciate that wonderful trivia. And now we're up to our program speaker introduction with Bob Kreider. Bob.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. It's my honor to introduce James Joyce III. And I'm guessing James wouldn't be with us today if he hadn't lived in Yakima and worked at the Yakima Herald Republic. and I'm the one who's responsible for hiring him back in 2004. Back at that time, we had an opening for an education reporter, and we always recruited nationally. And one of the things we looked for was diversity. But for this position, we also looked for a specialty skill in reporting, and that was experience in reporting on the No Child Left Behind Act, which had been signed into law in 2002 with broad bipartisan support, but it was having trouble getting implemented. Out of about 40 applications I received, the one person who stood head and shoulders above everybody else was James Joyce III. James was a reporter at that time, had been for about 2 years at a newspaper in Marion, Indiana. So he checked a lot of boxes, but something I wasn't expecting was a box I hadn't included, but was something his boss, his editor, filled me in on. She told me that while she didn't want to lose James, she knew that he would be leaving sometime relatively soon, and that there was something I should know about him. Besides the skills he had, it was what he was like as a person. James was somebody who was widely respected both within the newsroom and the newspaper and within the community. And that's something I came to really appreciate after he was hired and moved here in 2004. He became involved in some community events on behalf of the newspaper and otherwise. One of those newspaper events was One World, One Valley, which was a signature cultural celebration that the newspaper had started as a standalone event, and which was moved to the 4th of July as part of the State Fair Park activities, something that Michael Shepard accomplished. And all of us employees were asked if we could volunteer to do some things. And James raised his hand and said, hey, I do face painting. And what he liked to face paint was Spider-Man. So we put James in the face painting arena. I was there too. I did wilted flowers, and children kind of cried and ran away when I was there, but they formed a long line when James was there. He did a marvelous job. They really looked up to him. We also called on James, as he reminded me the other day in a phone call, to be the MC of one of our events called Indulge. It was a ladies' night out event. It had hundreds of women who attended, and he spearheaded that here. But it wasn't just the newspaper he volunteered for. He also was a volunteer track coach at Davis High School. And you should all know that James ran track at Ohio University, where he got his degree in journalism. Anyhow, after a couple of years, I moved on to another job at a newspaper in Maine, and James, after 2 more years, moved on and eventually made his way to California, where he got into politics, working for elected officials in the state assembly and the state senate. And then 4 years ago, he started Coffee with a Black Guy, which he'll fill you in on today. And one more thing you should know, that this week he announced that he is running for mayor of Santa Barbara, California. And I can see now what I saw back then in 2004. James is somebody who builds bridges in a community, and that is something this world sorely needs. James, welcome.
Bob, thank you for that warm introduction. Good afternoon, Yakima, Vegas, known as the Palm Springs of Washington, to those of you who are joining from elsewhere around the country. Thank you, Bob Kreider, who, as you heard, was largely to blame for my intersection with Yakima. And of course, thank you to the downtown Yakima Rotary. See a lot of recognizable faces and names: Miss Huey, Adrian, Mike Shepard, Dr. Bledsoe, and thank you. So thank you all for joining, and a nod to the president and president-elect of this club. So the great work that you all have been doing. And last but certainly not least, thank you to Eric Silvers, who started off as the chairman of my unofficial Yakima Welcoming Committee, who on week 1, maybe even day 1 of working at the YHR, after having that little blurb, that welcome blurb run in the paper, he came, took me out to lunch, and yep, it was probably Miss D's choo-choo, but he took me out to lunch, and he kind of acclimated me to Yakima and welcomed me to town. And so with that, it is truly, truly an honor to be here today, if only virtually. So with that, let me kick off this afternoon's message with a line from a PSA penned by the great street poet Sean Carter. Some of y'all know him better as Jay-Z. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is James E. Joyce with a C-E, the third, right? I am the son of Charlotte Virginia Lee Brown, a former model turned social worker, and who I'm honored to note is joining us on this Zoom this afternoon. Hello, Mother. I am the son of Charlotte Virginia Lee Brown and James E. Joyce, Jr., a contractor and veteran of the Vietnam War. He served in the Marine Corps, 11 Bravo to be exact. That's Company B, 1st Engineering Battalion, 1st Marine Division. My parents never married. My older sister and I were raised mostly by our mother, who's here. I am the little brother to Malia Alisa Joyce, a recent transplant to Oakland, California, and an acupuncture practitioner. I am uncle to Langston. I am grandson to, nephew to, cousin to, friend to, former co-worker to. I think you get the picture. These descriptors, connections, I just point out. This is not how I'm always seen while navigating life in the world around me. And still, despite that, what a time to be alive, right? I mean, in your wildest dreams, could you have ever imagined a reality like last year, 2020? A year without Kobe and Gigi, a year without a year with a damn global pandemic, a virus that has caused a shutdown of travel and commerce, only to be bested by its devastating impact on some families. A year where we saw the mass adaptation to technology. Zoom quickly became a household name. Well, as did Carol Baskin and Joe Exotica, as millions of us binge watched a reality TV series called Tiger King, Murder, Mayhem, and Madness. That was a reality show. It was a year where a young family with names like Meghan, Harry, and Archie pulled back from their royal life to relocate in a community of Montecito, just a 10-minute drive from where I join you virtually this afternoon. 2020 was certainly a year. It was a year that we unabashedly watched video of a young American man get hunted down in his neighborhood and killed like an animal by others in his community, Ahmaud Arbery. Then we largely remained silent after a young American frontline worker was aroused from her sleep by intruders, then shot and killed by those intruders who turned out to be police officers, Breonna Taylor. It was only after that visceral feeling that we collectively got from watching a craven criminal law enforcement officer kneel on the neck of George Floyd for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Consequently killing him. Only then did we decide that we had had enough. By all metrics, last year was a tough year, a struggle. Taking a quick look back at how I reintroduced myself versus how I'm seen when navigating the world around me. You see, being an 80s baby, I grew up under the notion that I was an endangered species. Yes, an endangered species. That's the language that was used to describe young Black males as I was growing up. The predominant narrative was that my options were pretty much relegated to prison, death, or maybe graduation. It's another struggle, right? With that, I'm reminded of a quote from a famous American social reformer and abolitionist from my home state of Maryland, a gentleman by the name of Frederick Douglass. Douglass, the only posthumously initiated member of my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, Black history. Douglass is known to have said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. A point of conflict, contention, or friction. In that, there's an opportunity, a problem awaiting a solution. That's a very American ideal. A problem a struggle, find a solution, help us progress. That problem, solution, struggle, progress rub is what is at the heart of innovation. And yes, innovation is also very American. At some point along the way, we were told that necessity is the mother of all invention, right? I'll buy that. Seems logical to me. It also seems logical to question the things we know. If necessity is the mother of invention, who do you think needed many of those inventions? I mean, who was doing the work, the manual labor that they would want to make things more efficient or easier? I would venture to say this probably wasn't massa. Who was likely scooping the ice cream that made Alfred L. Crawl empathize and think there's got to be a better way, leading to his creation, the ice cream scoop? It's another nugget in Black history for you. Necessity, struggle, invention is progress. This platform that I've created, Coffee with a Black Guy, this gimmick to inspire dialogue that should be happening anyway, it's rooted in Frederick Douglass's statement, if there's no struggle, there is no progress. More simply put, turning pain into gain. Coffee with a Black Guy may not have been a thing had it not been for those struggles that I experienced. You know, also kind of like that struggle of learning not to be angry and destructive, either internally or externally, following racially charged incidents. I know some of the DEI group has heard about this one, but one of those racially charged incidents, such as the night while living in Yakima, when my friends and I sat on the front porch of my house at the corner of 7th and Tieton, we were eating Taco Bell after an uneventful night out. We were probably at Jackson's. While sitting on this front porch, we were stunned to be suddenly held at gunpoint by a group of Yakima police officers, some of them with assault rifles. As we were instructed to keep our hands in the air, one of the officers went to my front door and grabbed the knob and pushed it open, walking in my house. I spoke up, mind you, at gunpoint, and instructed him that he had illegally entered my home and I had not given him authorization to enter, and that is supported by the 4th Amendment. He turned to me and exclaimed, "Who the hell do you think you are, Johnny Cochran or something?" After refusing to provide me with their business cards identifying themselves, the officers eventually left, confiscating a pellet gun that had been in my front room. Epic battles with the squirrels in the backyard with the bird feeders, I tell you. Thankfully, I had the presence of mind to refuse one of the officer's orders for me to go retrieve the gun and hand it to him. I ain't stupid, I told him. Mama ain't raised no fool. Ultimately, once they left, instead of anger, I pulled out a pen and a pad and instructed my two friends to write out their exact version of what had happened. Later, these written descriptions were used to pursue an internal investigation on the officers for their conduct. I was told corrective actions were taken. Instead of simply just bottling that up and moving on with my life, I chose to turn pains into community gain, a teachable moment. I am my story. Experiences like the one I just shared inform my perspective. Coffee with a Black Guy and my team, we built this thing slowly and steadily with intention for 4 years before this mass awakening of 2020. And while I leverage a lifetime of experiences and observations to help facilitate meaningful conversations, the idea kind of solidified when I was having a conversation with a fraternity brother of mine who at the time worked in the city administrator's office in the city of Hawthorne, California. I'd pressed him about, what community-based programs he had been part of that were relevant to our current conditions. And yeah, we really do talk about that kind of stuff. He shared with me that in the city of Hawthorne, the police department in 2011 started a program called Coffee with a Cop. They started it to try to humanize the badge and be seen beyond their uniform. Yep, something about that resonated with me. I want to be seen beyond my skin that somehow was deemed a threat to some. So yes, Coffee with a Black Guy was inspired by Coffee with a Cop. I suppose it's the programmatic and oratorical equivalent to, yeah, I sampled your voice. You was using it wrong. You made it a hot line. I made it a hot song. Yep, that's my second Jigga Man reference today. So for those of you all who do not know, go ahead and Google Jay-Z songs later. Works best if you have Tidal. That's the platform that he's created. It's Black owned, so another element of Black history for you. But I digress. Coffee with the Black Guy, my team and I, were allowed to grow with this movement, so that when the big scale up came in the midst of a global pandemic, it didn't matter. We, CWABG, we were ready for the pivot, right? We were allowed the opportunity, the privilege, so to speak, to evolve and grow as individuals and as an organization, to change, right? Interestingly enough, this is exactly the opportunity that we as a global community, as a society, have before us in this moment and looking forward. An opportunity to evolve, to grow, and to change. We all can be a part of that, right? I'm extremely happy to hear and know and help out with the Rotary Club as they're diving into some of the more internal work that leads towards this change. Celebrate your victories. With this notion of evolution and change, we are offered an opportunity to progress through the struggle, turn pain into community gain. That concept of community gain is also a driving ideal that has pushed me to once again get comfortable being uncomfortable, as I encourage a lot of the CWABG participants to do. The opportunity for community gain is in part why, as of earlier this week, as you heard, I announced my intentions to offer myself on the November 2021 ballot for Santa Barbara voters to elect me as their next mayor. Beyond policy, beyond platform, representation matters. Hashtag that, representation matters. Do that. Brothers and sisters of all shades and hues, your destiny is inextricably tied to the destiny of Black America, and we are not satisfied. Our future is indeed in our hands, and we can and must do better. But like I said earlier, what a time to be alive. In this time, I'm reminded of the philosophy behind the term Ubuntu. It's the Nguni Bantu word for humanity, often translated, I am because we are, or more literally, I am what I am because of who we all are. Some of you all may be more familiar with its Latin inverse, as inscribed on the seal of the United States, e pluribus unum, out of many one. But the familiarity with that versus the previous Ubuntu, that's another topic for another day. The stories and perspectives that I share through this social innovation, Coffee with the Black Guy, are indeed a reflection of the communities that have raised me, reared me, and poured into me. So thank you, Yakima. My experiences, my observations, I use that vulnerable transparency to provide a space for others to share in the same, to learn, to evolve, to grow, and to progress. These can be teachable moments for all of us. They've gotta be. Because I surely take no delight in sharing the reality of being raised by a single mother who culturally wasn't very dogged about collecting child support from my father, a war veteran, in part because it was hard enough out there for a Black man as it is. I take no delight in recounting a common confusion of adolescence I couldn't quite understand why, when walking home from middle school with my friends, the cars idling at the red lights locked their car doors as our pubescent bodies sauntered past them laughing. I take no delight in sharing that somehow, despite having the lived experience, along with one of my Coffee with the Black Guy co-founders, of having the lived experience of being caged out of our hometown neighborhood basketball court by our friendly neighborhood community policing law enforcement officer, while his partner cornered and beat our friend Sean to a pulp with a billy club. All because a few days prior, he had evidently gotten away from them when chased. Somehow, despite that, I remain unbittered. As Emmanuel Acho said, I remain aware, cautious, vigilant, maybe even a little bit empowered at this point, but definitely not bitter. Instead of lashing out in anger, self-medicating, isolating myself, I thought that through this vehicle that I've conceptualized and built with my partners, this thing that we call Coffee with the Black Guy presents us with a path moving forward into the future. Coffee with the Black Guy offers a simple roadmap that could move us beyond this mass awakening to the very raw and dangerous realities of racial injustice that plague our land, a reality that we were reminded of in sharp contrast on January 6th with the lackadaisical planning that led to what we now know as the Capitol insurrection. That blueprint that Coffee with the Black Guy offers is pretty simple. Coffee, connections, conversation. Just that can lead to bridging the empathy gap and genuine community building. That may require respectability politics to temporarily be tossed to the side in lieu of learning. And that will undoubtedly require you to find a way to evolve and get comfortable being uncomfortable. That may require you to challenge some of the things that you've learned and been indoctrinated with in your teachings. And I would argue that the path forward may require you to truly embody the moral and ethical imperatives so eloquently built into the motto of Stan Lee's Spider-Man character. With great power also comes great responsibility. But how, you ask, right? Allow these apparently new revelations, these discoveries, these epiphanies, inequities that we can no longer turn away from. Allow this new knowledge to inform all of your future actions. Now that you know better, do better. Allow this enlightened mindset to inform and guide future innovations, future businesses, future business deals, future purchases, future investments, investments of both dollars and your energy. So yes, we've already seen in 2021, things will be a little uncomfortable for a while, right? Nestle in it, recognize it, feel it, work through it individually, collectively, as an organization, as a family. Think of it this way. If you do yoga, and I was living in Yakima when I first was introduced to yoga, when you find or you learn, as you're doing yoga, you first learn a new pose, and it may be rather uncomfortable when you start, right? You may get shaky, feel a little unstable, but you breathe and you nestle in it. You drink some water, you keep trying. The more you try it, the less uncomfortable you are in that pose. The same with the cognitive muscle associated with talking about the important issues associated with racism. Many folks are uncomfortable with it. But the more you nestle in there, in that uncomfortability, the better we all are because of it. Okay, and if you don't do yoga, and yoga is not a point of reference for you, think of a flower, a daffodil. Just as a flower's journey to beauty is one that's rife with friction and uncomfortability, you know, as a flower, it starts with a seed and it has to go through a frictionless act for that seed to sprout. Then that seed and that sprout start going through the dirt. And then all of a sudden, after enough sunlight, then you see something pop up through the soil. Then these green things start unfolding, very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. But at the end of all that uncomfortable stuff, you get to that beautiful flower. To get to where we all deserve to be, that uncomfortability is simply the price of admission. It is with all humility and gratitude that I say to you, thank you for welcoming into your space this afternoon, and thank you for receiving this message. Ashe, Kiwanan. And if you'd like to know more about Coffee with the Black Guy, the movement, you can visit the website. I dropped it in the chat, but we'll again here shortly. CWABG.com. CWABG stands for Coffee with the Black Guy. And while you're there, you may want to consider supporting the movement. We have merchandise that is aimed to kind of keep the conversation going, as this shirt and my mug that I was drinking out of earlier. The coffee is cold now. And special for you all today, I'm providing a discount code for 10% off all merch through Saturday. And the code is SERVICE. So capital SERVICE. If you have thoughts or reflections on something that I shared with you here today, don't hesitate to reach out. My email is simply james@cwabg.com. I'm also up on all the social media at CWABG on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We even have a YouTube channel that you can get all of those from the website. And again, I say thank you for having me here. And I always would like to offer an opportunity for folks to ask questions if that's something that we can facilitate and folks may have them. Feel free to drop it either in the chat or, as I said, you can follow up with me later if we're unable to do that. So thank you so much.
James, thank you. What a powerful message. I know that it's just so close to our hearts to hear those words, and I really thank you very much for attending today. In honor of you speaking, we are going to be making a gift to our Yakima Rotary Charities with your name on it. So again, I just thank you so much for coming in. What I would recommend is after we formally adjourn, if you're willing, James, to stay on for some question and answer, I think that we then could unmute everybody. I'm looking at Carolyn to give me a yes. So at that point, we can unmute everybody for a further discussion. Again, thank you so much. I know that past President Eric Silvers has an announcement to make, so I'd like to hand the microphone over to him. Carolyn will need to unmute Eric.
Okay, wow. Thank you, James. Thank you, my friend. I really appreciate you ever so much. I just want to let you guys know for our next year, it kind of fell into our lap. And I just want to kind of give you an announcement to let you know. Those of you probably remember Moni Law. And then also she has a son named Matthew Law. Matthew is a Arthur, he's a director, he's an actor, producer, a cinematologist. He is fantastic, and we know of at least 2 Tyler Perry movies, A Fall from Grace, The Oval Office, and the Agents of the Shield, and also Motel. He is from Yakima. He was born and bred in Yakima, and he is going to be our next year's speaker. And it's hard to be able to hold that. So I had to let you guys know. And once again, look forward to being able to talk to you some more about this as we go along. And thank you again, James. And thank you to my Yakima Downtown Rotary. You guys are fantastic.
Thank you, Past President Eric. I look forward to that one. So we've got some great upcoming programs, and there's so many of you on. I want to continue to encourage you to join us. Please let us know if you'd like to attend. Next week's program is going to be Bridget Terrell, Teresa Atkinson, and Amy Mabe doing classification talks. Following that, we are going to be joined by Victor Ospina from Columbia to Zoom in. He'll be talking about the Corcoa Valley. And then the following week, Blake Schlonecker, who is a Heritage University professor, he creates crossword puzzles, and he's even had one in the New York Times, which is a pretty big deal. Local programs, gotta love them. So please feel free to join in for those. And again, guests, you're always welcome. Please come back and do let others know. A recording of this will be up on our website once it's all ready at yakimarotary.com. So yakimarotary.org. How could I forget? yakimarotary.org. So be sure to take a look on the website. It is also then on YouTube, so you can share it with as many people as you want. I know somebody in the chat suggested sharing it with their Yakima Valley students, so please do. We're honored you'd all attend today. Thank you so very much. And with that, we're officially adjourned.
Okay, if anybody has any questions, everybody has the ability to unmute.
So Mike, I'll just say Mike Shepard listed in the comments a while ago, and it's getting a little bit lost. And he said, James, tell us about your most memorable quote unquote coffee.
He's muted.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for that question, Mike. The most memorable, I'd have to say, was the one I did for February of 2019. It was the first time I had a huge crowd and really didn't anticipate it. And it was, we had 107 people join and was in a co-working space here in Santa Barbara. And I really didn't know what to expect. And off of the first question, the woman asked a question about the platform of Marianne Williamson, who was talking about reparations. And I wasn't aware that she was talking about reparations at that time. But that question came out as the first question. This big butterfly in my stomach dropped, like, I don't know how I'm going to answer this. And then somehow my mouth just opened and I started talking and it made sense. And so just kind of flowed into that. And what it was is I relied on some of the knowledge I had on reparations and the fact that there had been a bill in our federal Congress for several years, first introduced by Congressman John Conyers, that was asking for a commission to study reparations. It's called HR 40. And so being able to bring that context in, like after that, it was just like, all right, well, I think we have something here, because like the conversation started and it rolled right from that. And so, you know, that's a memorable one, largely because of that butterfly pit feeling right at the beginning of it.
See,
Any other questions?
Am I muted?
No, you're on, Bunker. Go ahead.
It says Phyllis Frank, but it's Bunker. Hello. I've had the pleasure of also listening in on some of your community forums, one in particular. And so could you tell us a little bit about how you shape those community forums in the Santa Barbara area and other cities?
Well, you're looking at it. Ask questions. It's as simple as that. It follows a no structure beyond a rough town hall format. Explain what the opportunity is. You know, there's some basic ground rules that I try to get folks to kind of adhere to. And so it's like, be respectful, be genuine, be willing to listen, be willing to feel something, and don't seek to dominate with your story. But short of that, it's just what the community, meeting folks where they are. And some folks may have questions that they've never got an opportunity to ask. Like one gentleman, when I went to speak to a senior center, he says, you know, I've been an athlete and a coach and you know, all my life. And when we were in the locker room, you know, those were our Negro players. They were our Negro friends. And then they started wanting to be called African American, and now it's, you know, Black. I don't get it. Where did we go? Where are we now? And how did we get here? Never had an opportunity to ask that question. But that question is like, I mean, I don't know, and I probably don't have all of the answers, but the reality of it is most of the answers to any question that we have are within our immediate surroundings. So in the room where we're having the conversation. So that's kind of the mentality that I go with it with. But just providing that space for the conversations to happen is I think, you know, a large first step.
Hey, James.
Yes,
Bob. I got a question. So have you had much participation by law officers, law enforcement, with any of these chats or coffee with a black guy? And what are those?
Unfortunately, even after multiple specific individual outreach efforts to law enforcement officers who I know and have relationships with, no. I had a captain of our California Highway Patrol who I have a great relationship with and had invited her on. But then again, they have to go through levels of approval to be able to show up in uniform to talk about issues, and they don't usually have a authority to be able to talk about things freely. The best that I've had is I've had retired law enforcement officers reach out. We have a law enforcement, a former police chief who lives down in the Orlando, Florida area, who's reached out and has offered to convene conversations. And interestingly enough, my chief of business or chief operations officer lives down in Orlando as well. The two of them have connected, and so we're looking for things that we could do on that. But there does seem to be, I don't know if it's a reluctance, not feeling welcome, whatever it is. Law enforcement has not come to these conversations. We've had, people who work in probation, parole, different things like that. And I've actually facilitated conversations otherwise under the Coffee with the Black Guy with some law enforcement officers, but it was a facilitated conversation. They weren't in uniform, and they were both African-American males. So it was a conversation, but it really didn't take on, I think, the permanence of what you're trying to get at with your question, is saying that, having law enforcement speak to some of these issues that are causing such discord within our communities.
Hi, James. Oh, oops.
My.
Hello. I think many I got a chance to work with James for a few years. Actually, when I first moved to Yakima, I was a young reporter back then, and James had such a great reputation for bringing the newsroom together. And I think another thing people should know about James was really great at just dialoguing with a lot of different people in Yakima, and that was something I always admired about you. And I guess transition, I was interested in hearing how that skill you had as a journalist really helped you as you kind of built these communities kind of on the political side, and then with your Coffee with the Black Guy.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Well, and you recall John Taylor, right? And so I picked a lot of interviewing tips up from him. If he ever interviews you, you're just having a meandering conversation, and he gets a lot of good nuggets to be able to fill in and fold into a story that way, right? And so kind of picking up that skill of just listening and finding out, like, man, everybody's got a story, and to listen to a story is an honor. And I've always kind of embodied, you heard the Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Having somebody tell your story, or having someone tell their story to you, they're entrusting you with a lot of power, because you hold the keys to their narrative, right? And so the responsibility comes in to take that, to not exploit that story, but to be able to utilize that story in a helpful way. And so whether that is telling that person's story for the greater community, whether that is hanging on to nuggets of that and utilizing that in conversations as somebody has a question that I may not have experienced personally, but I remember hearing and talking to somebody who had a story about this, and I'm able to kind of fold that into that learning environment. And so, the transferable skills from, being a good journalist. Some of you all may or may not see, but I had to go grab this. This was my journalism award for cheese zombies, right? I wrote a story about cheese zombies. And to be able to sit down and observe the importance of this thing that all the kids at the school were getting excited about, and I just didn't get it. That natural curiosity led to that story. And so I think that there's an element of that natural curiosity that we all have that we can harness and kind of find out about other people's story, but not for exploitation, for genuine learning. And I will give you your kudos, Mai, because when I did kick Coffee with the Black Guy off 4 years ago in 2016, some of the first feedback I got was from a people of color group in Seattle. and they were just going at me like, why are you doing this? Black, you're not the only Black guy. You shouldn't have to teach these folks about this, that, and the other. There was a lot of criticism, and I was like, whoa, take it easy. You're all the way in Seattle. I understand it's raining, but what I did is Maya and I connected, and I offered, look, hey, if these folks have a problem, I'm going to answer any question they have from this time to this time. Same thing with Coffee with the Black Guy. And so Maya helped set up an opportunity for, I think it was just a live chat or something like that on Facebook, answering these questions or kind of talking through, again, with my fingers through some of the challenges that other people had with this platform that I created.
Mr. Joyce.
Yes.
My experience is that discrimination, racism, hate toward people that are different is a learned behavior that children learn by modeling their parents. Have you heard of, are you aware of any good approaches for dealing with this in communities where that is really a problem, where the parents are really poisoning the children?
Yeah, I've got my work cut out for me. There's a community out in California called Ojai, California, and they've had some pretty significant anti-Semitic issues at their schools. And so this month, I'll start to work with that school district as they're engaging with their parents and community on issues, on community issues, and one specifically on diversity. And so learning that. And so really, it's about exposure. It's all about education. A lot of times as adults, we think that we're beyond being educated, and life is a lifelong learning process. And so it is about sometimes breaking away the groups, and so taking the students and dealing with them isolated as students, taking the parents and dealing with them isolated as parents, because the language that you use to connect with each group is slightly different, and that is important, right? The language you use is important. So that is a tip, but there's also value in at some point bringing them all back together into the same room to have the conversation, so they can learn from each other. As we know, our youth can often teach us quite a bit, and so there's just it's really kind of embodying the entrepreneurial spirit of failing forward, right? And so we'll just try things until they work, and there's no blueprint to that there was no plan to get us where we are now. And so we need to continue to kind of embody this whole idea of an experiment of democracy, just experiment with some things as we move forward into a better place. And you know what, I do apologize because I was just reminded here that I have a 1:30 scheduled, and that was my fault, but I do have a client meeting coming up. So the work continues. But thank you all for your questions and for this engagement. If there's still stuff that's hanging out there, hit me up. Actually, yeah, just hit me up, and hey, we might even be interested in doing like an Instagram live, continuing this later on this afternoon if enough folks reach out. And so,
well, James,
thank you for your questions.
You've been so incredibly gracious with your time and taking extra time beyond the meeting for questions. So we will let you zoom off. I want to thank you again for coming and sharing your incredible program with us. I want to send additional shout outs to everybody involved in the meeting today. It absolutely was exceptional. I am so thrilled to see how many guests joined us, and I do hope you guests know that you're welcome anytime. Special thank you to Quinn, Carolyn, Lorna, David for running a Zoom this size. We're all learning new things on Zoom. So again, with that, we're now officially adjourned, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everyone. Have a great day.